Morality versus relativism. Morality, originating from the Latin term moralitas coined by Cicero, and denoting societal traditions, represents the notions of good and bad, right and wrong, virtue and vice, commonly accepted within a society. It also encompasses the norms of behavior derived from these notions. Intriguingly, the very etymology of the word suggests a form of relativism. After all, what could be more diverse than the traditions of different societies, or even the same society at different times? This brings us to the question concerning the universality of the moral law, as postulated by Immanuel Kant. Kant asserted that the moral law is constant, a universal imperative independent of context or individual perception. But how did he arrive at this conclusion in the face of varied societal norms and traditions? How can a universal moral law coexist with the undeniable fact of cultural diversity? These questions underscore the clash between the principle of moral absolutism and the realities of moral relativism, challenging us to navigate the intricate labyrinth of contemporary moral philosophy. Examples of moral relativism in modern society abound, as attitudes and norms shift and adapt across different cultural and social contexts. Consider the case of euthanasia or assisted suicide. This is a deeply divisive issue, framed differently by various societies. In some countries, like Canada, the Netherlands and Belgium, euthanasia is viewed as a compassionate act, a recognition of personal autonomy in the face of unbearable suffering. Yet in many other societies, religious convictions or the inherent value placed on life make this act morally unacceptable, irrespective of the individual's suffering. Euthanasia, designed to be an ultimate act of compassion for those enduring severe, incurable suffering, raises complex moral questions. One of the primary issues revolves around the immutable nature of this decision. Unlike many areas of law and morality, where deviations and violations can often be reversed or rectified, the finality of euthanasia, much like capital punishment, allows for no such redress. The inherent problem intensifies when considering the imperfect enforcement of laws surrounding euthanasia. News headlines frequently report cases where individuals, under the veil of a severe diagnosis, opted for euthanasia due to unbearable circumstances. These situations are often more nuanced, with underlying issues such as dire financial conditions or other rectifiable hardships, rather than the medical prognosis itself, serving as the real catalyst for such a drastic decision. Consequently, what should ideally epitomize the highest level of empathy for the irredeemably ill, in practice, acquires disturbing undertones. It underscores the pressing need for diligent societal and legislative oversight, stringent safeguards, and comprehensive support systems that address broader societal issues that may drive individuals towards such desperate measures. During a conversation with a nurse who assists with euthanasia procedures a couple of times a week, I posed the question, have there ever been cancellations requested by the patient? Her response was a stark no. We live in a world where we regularly cancel dentist appointments for trivial reasons. Yet, we're confronted with a scenario where individuals seemingly never rescind their own scheduled deaths. Doesn't this suggest they are under some form of pressure? They may fear that a cancellation would eliminate future opportunities for the procedure, or something else altogether might ensue. Our society, having engaged in debates and subsequently legislated euthanasia, seems to have adopted a posture of collective amnesia about the ongoing reality of the practice. It appears the intricacies of what actually transpires in these contexts remain unknown, uninteresting, or unpalatable to many. Typically, the public's attention is recaptured only when a scandal erupts, usually triggered by someone who finds it advantageous to spotlight the issue. This widespread apathy or indifference towards such grave matters of life and death, and the seeming absence of continued scrutiny or accountability, is deeply concerning and warrants urgent introspection and action. The issue of same-sex marriage offers another stark example. Once universally stigmatized, societal attitudes towards same-sex relationships have dramatically changed in many parts of the world over the past few decades. Today, numerous countries recognize and celebrate same-sex marriages, viewing them as a fundamental human right. However, in other parts of the globe, cultural, religious, or traditional beliefs still vehemently oppose such unions, deeming them immoral. These examples illustrate how morality, far from being a fixed, absolute concept, often flexes and molds itself to the local cultural, social, and individual context. The prism of moral relativism allows us to appreciate this diversity, reminding us that morality is as multifaceted and dynamic as the societies it permeates. In the philosophical discourse of morality versus relativism, the dichotomy primarily stems from the underlying concept of universal versus subjective truth. Morality, in its broadest sense, espouses the belief in a universal ethical code, a standard that transcends time, space, culture, and personal whims. It posits that certain actions are inherently right or wrong, irrespective of their cultural or personal contexts. This framework of morality thus provides an anchoring point for ethical judgments, allowing for a collective consensus on the fundamental values we deem essential for a just and humane society. In contrast, relativism challenges this assertion of absolute morality by arguing that ethical truths are not universal but subjective and contingent upon the social, cultural, and personal context in which they arise. This perspective postulates that what is deemed moral in one culture may be considered immoral in another and vice versa. Such a standpoint fosters understanding and acceptance of cultural diversity, but also raises the thorny question of how we can pass judgment or condemn actions if all moral codes are relative and hence, equally valid. This debate between morality and relativism, thus, lies at the very heart of our understanding of ethics and humanity, shaping our societal norms, judgments, and individual beliefs. The issue at hand is the intricate structure of the human mind, designed in a way that predisposes us to incessantly lay blame. In our mental framework, everything has a cause, everything happens for a reason, traced in a chain of cause and effect. With such deterministic thinking, we are inherently prone to pinpoint culpability, almost like a default setting that is programmed into our cognition. Yet, this brings to light the inherent tension between our moral structures and the very essence of relativism. We always yearn for a perpetrator, an identifiable source of our problems, and this approach collides with the broader understanding of relativism where events, actions, or thoughts are perceived in relation to their specific contexts, not universally. By blaming, we often neglect the multidimensional spectrum of influencing factors and oversimplify complex realities. Our innate tendency to assign blame contradicts the concept of relativism, a principle that emphasizes understanding through multiple perspectives rather than singling out one definitive cause. The instigation of blame is an intriguing aspect of human cognition, often casting a shadow of guilt upon an external entity or even upon oneself. Blame seems to be an ever-present entity, an elusive yet tangible scapegoat within our narratives. To accommodate this, the mind has honed a sophisticated mechanism for justification and self-justification. It functions as a psychological shield, protecting our self-perception and reducing cognitive dissonance, often irrespective of the actual merit of our actions. Given this propensity for rationalizing our actions and the shifting nature of blame, the stability of moral principles can be seen as a mere illusion. This is true even at an individual level, let alone when considering the vast expanses of society or humanity as a whole. For instance, consider how varied moral compasses can be: the environmental activist who justifies occasional air travel, citing the larger good, the desperate parent stealing to feed their family, the act framed within a context of survival, or even nations waging war, cloaked in the language of liberation and defense. These examples illustrate the fluidity and contextual nature of moral principles, challenging the notion of absolute morality and bringing into question the conflicts between morality and relativism. The nuances inherent in moral evaluation of individuals and their actions often serve as lifebuoys for justifying a range of behaviors. Habituation, in particular, plays an intriguing role in facilitating lenient rationalization. When immoral phenomena become frequent, they often lose their immorality in our perception, slipping into the realm of accepted norms. This underlines the dynamic nature of morality, emphasizing its susceptibility to change over time and varying contexts. Consider, for example, how societal norms have shifted over time. Once deemed immoral, acts such as divorce or cohabitation outside marriage are now generally accepted in many societies. On the other hand, consider the widespread use of smartphones. While they have undeniably become a staple of modern life, their excessive use, especially in social settings, is increasingly being viewed as a breach of social etiquette. Similarly, at the organizational level, practices like tax avoidance, previously considered shrewd business strategies, are now subject to intense public scrutiny and considered unethical by many. These examples clearly demonstrate how the frequency of a phenomenon can desensitize us to its moral implications, highlighting the collision course of morality and relativism. The belief in unchanging, absolute morality can be highly detrimental. It bestows upon individuals the perceived authority to judge others, an act which in itself can be seen as profoundly immoral. This concept of static morality, universal and immutable, often leads to rigid judgments and a lack of understanding or empathy for divergent perspectives, thereby stifling the growth of a pluralistic society. Take, for example, issues like capital punishment, abortion, or even dietary choices. Individuals who ascribe to a fixed moral code may see these matters in black and white terms, leaving little room for nuances. To them, capital punishment might always be wrong, disregarding contexts where it may be seen as a necessary deterrent. They may universally oppose abortion, overlooking instances of medical necessity or cases of assault, or they might harshly judge those with differing dietary habits based on their own ethical or health-based beliefs. In each case, the rigidity of moral absolutism closes off conversation and understanding, hindering the harmonious coexistence of varying viewpoints. These examples underscore the importance of acknowledging the complexities and relativism in moral judgment. So, what is the solution? Where should we seek guidance if everything is indeed relative? Perhaps, the only viable compass can be found in human needs, spanning the spectrum from basic physiological necessities to higher, more intricate desires. Depriving a healthy individual of food or water is immoral, regardless of the justification. Similarly, denying someone safety, love, acceptance in society, access to information, beauty, or opportunities for self-realization, these are all fundamentally immoral actions. Yet, on the flip side, forcing a person to eat, to love, to learn, this, too, can be deemed immoral. It is not our place to dictate the course of others' lives, but rather to provide the opportunities and allow them the freedom to choose whether to avail them or not. This might involve creating environments that nurture personal growth, fostering systems that support individual decisions, or shaping societies that respect different lifestyles. Respecting individual autonomy while ensuring basic human needs are met, can be a balancing act, a dance between morality and relativism. Through this lens, the moral imperative becomes not one of judgment, but of provision and acceptance.